Okay, guys, welcome to another episode of Rotten Reviews. On this episode, I take a look at the 2019 Netflix series The Island. It has an 8% on the tomato meter and a 34% on the audience score. It is rotten. I'll completely agree. It is certainly rotten. I did attempt to watch this with an open mind. I watched the first 4 episodes, and that was enough for me to conclude that it is indeed rotten. And I had heard from many others online and in other YouTube videos that this was certainly a rotten series. It has been referenced as being rotten and offensive to a lot of people out there. Now, it didn't offend me. In fact, the first episode, I didn't consider it that great, but it actually it led me to keep watching, and it took until into the end of the third episode, the beginning of the fourth, before I realized that this it was going to be thoroughly rotten. It kind of started out as a sort of a nod to the old Lost franchise, and combined the Lost storyline with sort of a dumber and cheesier dialogue fest, if you will, injected into Lost. And then this whole thing just derails right from a cheesy version of Lost into a sort of virtual reality or Matrix-like prison movie. It's got elements from a few different things, and this series starts off with a gratuitous display of tits and ass. Basically, they definitely want everything to feature tits and ass in every shot. Certainly, it doesn't have outright nudity, but it makes sure the viewer is always getting an eyeful of some female or sometimes male physique while things are going on. And it definitely seems like it's an attempt to otherwise, pump up an otherwise bad and boring storyline. In fact, a lot of the drama seems totally contrived and cheesy and cliche, and they're just putting a lot of shapely figures in there to keep you watching. It's a total fail on that regard because, by the time I got to episode 4, there wasn't enough, female curvature in this that could keep me watching no matter what. And I don't even think a teenage boy could continue watching this for very long, but they tried. Now, this stars Natalie Martinez, of which I've seen in other things, although she's not famous enough where I could tell, I could name her by sight. I had to look up her name, although I do recognize her from other things. And its most recognizable star is certainly Bruce McGill. He's been in many movies, he's been in many TV shows, a lot of science fiction and fantasy. He's very recognizable, and he often does a serviceable job in other things in the sci-fi realm. In this, however, his performance is very off-putting as a cowboy-like caricature character who's also a Texas prison guard, which has, that sounds like I'm talking about something that has nothing to do with the island. And yet, when this show reveals in its third episode, that it is some type of virtual reality on this island, and actually these characters are prisoners in a Texas prison in some, green area of Texas. Bruce McGill is the evil and very strange and off-putting warden of this prison, wearing a cowboy hat and drinking whiskey. It's a complete caricature, and you can see where Bruce McGill is actually reading his lines off just a little bit off camera, and sometimes he forgets his line, and then he reads it. His eyes catch the cue card, so to speak, and he starts reading his line again, and it's very cheesy. And that's why I say this completely falls apart when it gets to the prison reveal, because the prison guards are completely ridiculous and over the top, and so is the prison psychologist, and the whole thing just goes totally to shit at that point. But while it's on the island, the first 1 or 2 episodes, it's passable, although it's a borderline a little bit cheesy and over dramatic, and it's going into a little bit of the boredom. And then when it gets to that prison reveal, and it just kind of reveals everything in episode 3, and it just totally goes to shit. Now, I say this has, it has an 8% on the tomato meter. It certainly deserves an 8% on the audience score. I don't know why it's got such a high audience score at 34%. To me, this is closer to a 10% audience score if I thought, if I thought I was taking a better look at this fairness wise. There are probably people pumping this up, giving 5 stars reviews to it for whatever purpose, but honestly, I think in all fairness, this deserves around a 10% audience score. But as it were, let's just take a look at the audience reviews for ourselves. And we have one from 3 hours ago. 2.5 stars. It started off fine. First episode or two were engaging when not much was known. I feel like they went too fast with adding the background information. Island was barely explored, and a lot of don't believe this person and shouting for a few episodes. The end came rather sudden as well. Yeah, I can't speak to the end. I'm not going to try to sit through all 8 or 10 episodes of this. There's no point. I can tell it's rotten. I'm sure we're going to get some spoilers down in these audience reviews, or maybe not. But in any case, 2.5 stars, I disagree. I'll say this is like half a star, perhaps at times peaking at 1 star, just for, the attempt to throw different things together. All in all, though, yeah, I give this half a star. People were paid in the production of it. I hear the term, I hear the phrase that $14 or $15 million was thrown around at this thing, the production value. I don't know about that, but I'll say that people got paid somewhere along the lines, and so that's why I'll give this half a star for the effort. Let's continue on. 4 days ago, 4 stars. I'm about halfway, but I think it's extremely interesting and unique. Well, I'll agree it is unique. They're trying to combine, virtual reality, a prison, kind of a crooked prison drama, maybe trying to do some kind of escape from prison drama. At the same time, they're doing like a Lost concept at the same time. The problem is, at about, the 3rd episode, everything's revealed. And so there's no more mystery anymore, whereas in Lost, the whole idea was to keep throwing endless mysteries at the audience faster than they could be explained or solved. And so that kept people watching, at least for a while. This one, nope. After about 3 episodes, certainly by the 4th episode, there's nothing more to be held back. It just kind of blows its load, as it were, and you're just completely going, yeah, this is dumb. So let's move on. Half a star. Worst series scene. Had to watch a few episodes, wondering when the plot will unravel. Well, it unraveled, yeah, 2.5, 3 episodes in. Certainly by the beginning of the 4th, it's completely unraveled, so what's the point? And that's why I won't continue it. 4 stars. I'm really not sure why so many people find this as abysmal as I've read. I honestly really enjoyed it. Maybe I'm just under some sort of rock or something. I don't know. I tend to have trouble staying invested in TV shows, but this one held my attention pretty well. It's a fascinating concept, twisted, and leaves a lot of room to think. If more came out, I'd definitely watch. Well, I'll definitely disagree. In the second, it might have been the first, but certainly in the second episode, it's shown to us that they're in some kind of controlled environment because, at one point a conch shell or a seashell is broken open, and inside is an electronic transmitter or, electronic remote device of some type. And on the inside of the seashell, it says property of some such corporation printed on the inside with a barcode. That's certainly a reveal that they're in a controlled environment and that the seashell, like other things on the island, may be just elaborate props. That's fine, but then later it doesn't match with the virtual reality aspect, because if this whole thing, the island, were inside the mind of the protagonist character, inside Natalie Martinez's character's mind, then why are there props inside with corporate logos on them to be revealed? It's kind of trying to have 2 different types of fakery going on at the same time. It's convoluted. It doesn't make sense. If it were a virtual reality, why would you have fake props inside of it? No, it just kind of like it craps on its own premise. It's sort of implying that, yes, it's a virtual reality inside the mind of a prisoner in a Texas prison, but at the same time, inside this virtual reality, there are fake props of some company. complete nonsense, and I'm not willing to go past the beginning of episode 4 to find out just how stupid it really gets. 1 star. The only redeeming things is watching Natalie Martinez and the Eberhardt chicks' asses as they ran around. Martinez also has nice tits. She squandered her acting talent on this turd. She looks natural in the role she was cast in. The others were just pathetic. Again, I'll say it again, her body and all the curves of her body were always in frame no matter what action was going on, and that was also the case with other characters in the minor roles they had. So again, yes, it's not just a coincidence that every single frame of this video of the show has some part of the curves of her body in it. This is deliberate. You could say it's an attempt to get 12-year-old boys to keep watching because there isn't true nudity, but it's not enough for adults, so it's a fail. But it's just too obvious what they're trying to do. Here's 4 stars. I thought it was pretty good. Most people saw it that it was a ripoff of Lost, even though as someone who has watched every season of Lost 3 to 4 times now, it is nothing like that, Island. Get your head out of the gutter and stop being so biased. Well, I disagree, and furthermore, if this reviewer has actually watched every episode of Lost 3 to 4 times, I'm not sure why. Maybe because, like a lot of people, they couldn't figure out where the hell it went or how it got there or how many of those ridiculous mysteries were ever solved. This one isn't even worth it to get that far, and so, as a fan of Lost, I think you would be insulted at this because it's a mess. 3 to 4 episodes in, there's no mystery to be solved here except why you're still watching it and why you haven't actually seen real nudity in something that, since it's on Netflix, it should have at least given you a little real nudity instead of just constantly teasing you. So there wasn't even a payoff here in the most salacious way. So I disagree with that 4 stars. You need to remove them and go back to half a star. Here's 1 star from November 17th. Oh dear, made it 20 minutes into the first episode in the hope that it would pick up, but it did precisely the opposite. Shallow characters, hammy script, and ropey set dressing. You can clearly see that the sand has been raked in the opening scene, make this on the verge of parody. Yeah, I'll agree, you can tell that the sand has been prepared for the opening scene. A lot of things were like that in here. A lot of the, right off the bat, you've seen this beach and this environment before. It's clearly Hawaii somewhere. Lost was filmed in Hawaii. So many movies, whether they're set in Thailand or Africa or in Hawaii, are filmed in Hawaii along this same stretch of coast. So it's just so familiar, and that's another reason why people might compare this to Lost, because it is in fact filmed within the same, mile or two of where Lost was filmed. So that's a big problem too. 5 stars. Wow, a 5-star review. I actually really enjoyed this first season. I just think there should have been a bit more character development and better writing. Overall, the storyline was very interesting and always left me wanting to watch another episode. I would really recommend, I would suggest to give it some time because it truly gets good after a few episodes. Hopefully there's another season. I would love to see how they're doing on the island and if who is able to redeem themselves. Wow, this person's really overselling this. Better writing, yes, they said it themselves. This needed better writing right from the start. The dialogue, even in the first episode, was hokey and a little bit unbelievable. And when the first characters meet each other after waking up on the beach, the way they react to each other and their dialogue is just bad. It's not good. A 13-year-old could have done better, and I'll leave it at that. 2 stars. It's a wannabe sci-fi show with a good concept, but probably the worst writing I've ever seen. Boring characters, unrealistic reactions, and unrelatable conversations. A waste of a pretty good idea. I gave 2 stars for the nice pictures. You mean you gave 2 stars for the beautiful curves that you saw, but I'll leave it at that. I will say again, the writing was really bad. There were 2 characters, Natalie Martinez being the first one that wakes up, your main character. When she met the next female character, they simply didn't like each other and really just kind of hated each other in that cold female way. Why? No particular reason. The writers just wrote them that way. Never mind, they didn't insult each other. They didn't have a history with each other. Their memories had been wiped, and yet they just needed to have this adversarial, female hate, smoldering hate relationship with each other. and the writing was just really bad like that. Characters acted like they had things going on with each other when they didn't, and they couldn't have had because of the fact that they had no memories of themselves or each other, and yet it just needed this contrived drama to go along. And so we got a lot of drama on the beach the first two episodes, a lot of characters doing things to each other, arguing with each other, with, the emotion of people that should have deep-seated grievances with each other, and yet they were strangers. Really terrible writing. 5 stars. This is a great show. If you've watched Black Mirror, you'd understand the show. And no, not at all, because you're right away led to believe that they're in some kind of controlled environment. One of the first things they discover is that they all have name tags on the back of their shirts that have their names printed on these custom name tags. So right away you know that they've been set up or put into this environment, and then it gets worse from there. There's no mystery, there's no big plot twist or reveal, because by the time you actually figure out they're all in a virtual reality and they're in prison, you've already guessed that this is going to happen long before it does, so it's a complete fail. 5 stars. This was a very good show, very intriguing. I wanted to know what was going to happen next. I don't believe you at all. I'm sorry. 3.5 stars. I honestly don't think it was so bad. It's an interesting concept. I enjoyed it enough to continue watching. The protagonist was really badass, and there are some moments that serve great justice. The protagonist was not badass. She was just like a prisoner that somehow even though it's shown that she was in prison for murdering somebody, maybe it was her mom. This is shown over and over again, this scene in her mind that maybe she's killed her mom, like shot her mom. But regardless, she's somehow a badass fighter and knows how to take on, a dozen prison guards and just kick their ass silly. It doesn't make any sense, and she's not a badass. She's just a cartoon character with no explanation of how she's such a badass. Completely ridiculous. Let's move on. 5 stars. This show provides a completely different concept than the same tiring survival shows. It definitely kept my attention. I'd like to see more like this. I don't believe that you even watched this. What were you watching? Okay, let's move on. 1 star. Turn off the volume, watch it in fast forward. It's still terrible. I give it 1 star because the sound, cinematography, and some of the special effects were well done, but other than that, it's complete rubbish. Not worth your time unless you want to waste too many hours watching 10 people sitting on the beach arguing and threatening each other. Well, and I agree kind of with the 1 star. I say half a star, but I'll say, yeah, you can at least turn off the sound and you'll watch like the curves of the girls, especially the main character, Natalie Martinez. You'll watch her like, moving her curves around the screen, and if that's your thing, well, then enjoy in silence, or I don't know, put on some music in the background while you watch it. I'll go into something else messed up about the plot of this, about this heroic main character. She's got all these fighting skills, and she's able to beat up a bunch of prison guards in prison. She's a complete badass, even though she's like 5'5" or whatnot. Okay, fine, but then how come when she's on the island in her virtual reality, she gets her ass kicked by a bunch of other people that are smaller and less of a fighter than she is? They're not trained prison guards, but they beat her up pretty good. But all of a sudden, when she's out in the real world, she's a badass and defeating prison guards, evading drones, multiple shots of gunfire, etc. It's completely ridiculous and breaks its own logic. Half a star. This is definitely the worst Netflix original I have ever seen. The sheer cheapness of the production, the hackiness and downright baffling choices made in the writing, and the atrocious acting all make it so. Truly shocking, considering that this is exactly the sort of dumb science fiction stuff I usually go for. I can't go as far as to say that it's the worst show on Netflix, though, as I know they will frequently pick up anything and everything just to increase the size of their library. Is it so bad it's good, though? Hard to say. No, this is not one of those things that it's so bad that it's good, that you can crack, jokes over it while you crack open beers. It is not all that. It is simply too stupid. And, there's a lot of cringe-worthy stuff, especially with Bruce McGill's Texas prison warden thing. It's cringe-worthy watching him at one point in his weird caricature that he's doing, scold this panel of experts in his prison because he's the boss. But then in another scene, a few minutes removed, they're scolding him and putting him in his place. They can't even get the story right as to who's really in charge of this prison, So 4 episodes in, and I don't really know who's in charge. I just know that Bruce McGill's character is just evil and over the top, and he's a stupid cowboy, and he's not even good at playing a cowboy. It just comes off as really cringe-inducing, and it's supposed to be set in Texas, so of course the prison warden's got to wear a cowboy hat, and he's got to have a big pot belly, and he's got to like drink bourbon out of a rocks glass. It's just completely stupid. Half a star. What a dragged out, ridiculous show. There's nothing happening on this show. It's just people on an island doing nothing, and it's so boring. I watched the first episode, part of the second, and I am done. It doesn't even have a plot. They're all practically naked, and there's nothing to this show. The women wonder why they get attacked. Well, put some clothes on, and you probably won't. Yeah, it is like that. The first 2 episodes, it's just like the girls all have great bodies, and they have to show you, and the girls' outfits are like custom tailored to be as tight as possible to show every curve of their body, whereas the same outfits the men are wearing aren't cut that way. So it's definitely like totally contrived as just to show you the females' bodies. And yeah, there's the right off the bat, the first thing that happens to the main character is she goes off by herself with the main male lead in the show, and the first thing that happens is they have a little romantic moment, and he immediately tries to rape her in front of a waterfall at a lagoon. And then later they become friends, and it's no big deal. They brush it off like, yeah, that stuff kind of happens. It's completely stupid. And in the same episode or 1 episode later, even though the rest of the people on the island know that the main male character raped or tried to rape the other one, yet another woman goes off with him out in the jungle and has a little volunteer romantic sexual tryst with him. And then later regrets it and saying that she feels ashamed of herself. It's completely bizarre. The women are trying to get themselves raped and then complaining about it later, and literally this is what happens. It's almost laugh out loud, but it's just not quite there. It could have been with better dialogue, and it could have been one of those films that you just laughed at, but it's taking itself too seriously at the same time. 3.5 stars. It's a good flick, nothing to call amazing, but it's good and does bring into imaginings of The Matrix meets Jail, hoping for a second season. No, it's really dumb. I first saw this concept back in the 90s with the Denzel Washington movie Virtuosity, where they put prisoners inside a virtual reality to reform them or whatnot. And that's the same concept here mixed with The Lost. And it's not new at all. It's just like mashing a bunch of different concepts together and then trying to like show you hot girls' bodies at the same time. If you can make it through the first 2 episodes into the third, you'll find out that this is exactly what it is. Let's move on. Half a star. None of the characters or even the story is remotely interesting or relatable. Couldn't even remember all of their names. Who lands on a deserted island and starts a fight instead of sticking together? Forced myself to watch through it. Somehow I think the material is not bad, but the implementation just sucks. But what do I know? Only started watching in hope of getting something similar to Lost. Even Harper's Island was way better. Don't watch it. Yeah, the thing is, who lands on it? When all these characters wake up with no memory on the beach, they at one point they realized the situation that they're in, that they're up the creek without a paddle, but then they just kind of hang out and like enjoy some sun tanning and have romantic interludes and bicker with each other, and they're not really that interested in finding food or trying to find where they are or trying to find civilization. They just kind of assume they're like left alone on an island, and they should just have fun for a while, even though they could be dead in a while for all they know. And they don't even spend much time trying to figure out they're on an island. Like, it never really tells me why they assumed they're on an island to begin with. If I woke up on that stretch of beach, I wouldn't even assume it was an island until I had gone around this island. But no, they just flat out, they don't go more than 100 yards in any direction on the beach and just assume they're on an island and that they're stuck there. It doesn't make any sense in that regard. And there's no sense of urgency. One girl decides to just sit down and, suntan herself and show us her body, while, nobody attempts, assuming that they're on some deserted island, nobody attempts to go find food or anything else right away. They just kind of hang out and have a drama. It makes no damn sense. It's completely strange. 5 stars. I loved this show. It's a very interesting concept. It's like Lost meets The Matrix. I'd love to see more seasons. I don't believe you unless you just want to see more girls in tight clothes, maybe. 3 stars. It's all right. Not nearly as bad as the critics say. It's got some interesting moments, and I really liked Kate Bosworth and the lead character in it, though I found most of the islanders super annoying. The conspiracy behind the island was shown unlike the 3rd episode, which really removed any of the drama they were going for. It wasn't a bad way to spend a Sunday afternoon. Yeah, sure. It's not a bad way to spend a Sunday afternoon if you just want to see some girls in some tight clothes on the beach. Otherwise, there's no point to this, really. Let's continue on. 1.5 stars. The acting and characters were so bad it was entertaining in a way it was not intended, I'm sure. I was surprised and lightly comforted at the end of episode 1 to see this was by Neil LaBute. I liked his play Some Girls and Audubon very much. My guess is he got some bad advice on casting and cheesy camera work and soundtrack, etc., and stuff was out of his control. I enjoyed the concept and idea, so it gets an extra half star for that. Dialogue was cringy, though. He's a good writer. Okay, so they're saying they appreciated other stuff the writer wrote. Yeah, this didn't look like the writer was involved. It looked like they bought the idea from somebody that wrote something better, and they just kind of made this out of it, and it shows. It's really bad. 5 stars. This show deserves way more credit than these 12 critics rated it. Sure, the setup was weird, and how they revealed the plot seemed very rushed and unorganized, but the show was super interesting, fun to watch. Can binge watch in a day. The cast was diverse and overall a good show to watch. I mean, and Grey's Anatomy still has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. That should go to show you not to take these reviews so serious. I mean, come on, I've been a fan for years, but at this point, okay, this person's saying this is 5 stars and it's only because Rotten Tomatoes is no good that it's rated lower than that. No, I'm sorry. The audience review is actually too high on this, so let's move on. 4 stars. Sure, there were some weird and unexplained things, but I was entertained. For a miniseries, they didn't have time to really get into it, but if they had, I think it would have been even better. Reviews say they hated the characters. Yeah, you're supposed to. No. No. Sorry, again, I disagree. There was nothing interesting about the characters other than the fact that all the women were custom tailored into clothes to be super tight and exciting to the male viewer. Otherwise, there wasn't anything here. Half a star. I saw the trailer and really did not want to watch the show. I started to watch the show and within a couple of minutes missed hating the trailer. Unwatchable. Netflix, I hope you are paying attention. Stop greenlighting terrible projects hoping to attract a millennial audience. They really aren't dumb enough to want this drivel. Yeah, I'll agree on the half a star, and I think this review is kind of like my own review. You can tell within the first 20 minutes that the dialogue is bad, the writing is bad, the characters interacting with each other, it doesn't seem believable or realistic. It just comes off as kind of off-putting and cringy. So yeah, half a star, and I only watched further to see when the reveal was going to happen, and lo and behold, episode 3 and 4, you got it all right there. 2 stars. I'm 10 minutes into the first episode and I hate half the characters already. Yeah, they have a cringe-worthy, hateful thing. The women are kind of hating each other for no reason. They're just written to like hate each other from first sight. Very strange and unbelievable. Half a star. Some tell Netflix to cancel this show immediately. Well, it's too late. They produced all their episodes, and I don't think they're going to produce more, so that might be some kind of consolation. But anyway, it's too late to stop this. Half a star. Wow. They cancel good shows and fund this crap. Well, it must have been cheap. Very cheap. 1 star. I think the guy with the shark actually committed suicide in order to leave the show. I followed him shortly after. Yeah, I'll bring that up. In the first episode, a guy goes out swimming. Never mind the fact that the characters should be concerned about their survival. One guy just decides he needs to take off his clothes and go swimming. Okay, fine. While one girl is sunbathing. Okay, fine. He goes off into the water to go swimming. All of a sudden, gigantic sharks appear almost on cue and seem to rip him apart and kill him. But then later on, he just appears laying on the beach. No reason of how he got there, and he's just got a bite mark on one of his legs, and the rest of him is intact, and he's just laying there all calmly on his back on the beach, high above the waterline. Makes no sense, completely stupid and illogical. But thank you for bringing that up too. 0.5 star. The acting and script are beyond atrocious. Yes. 4 stars. I really enjoyed this show. I am shocked at the negative reviews. The storyline was creative and suspenseful. The characters were compelling and interesting. I watched this series before reading the reviews and suggested it to my friends and family. It is definitely worth watching, and I was hoping for a second season, but unfortunately, after such scathing reviews, it probably won't happen. I don't believe you. I think you were involved in the production or marketing of this. Most likely your review is included in the marketing budget, because I simply do not believe a word you are saying, especially about recommending it to family and friends. I do not believe you. Okay, let's go through a few more. 3.5 stars. Could have been much better. Had a promising premise. Yeah, it was promising before the first 10 minutes, and then you realized, oh boy, somebody's not very good as a writer. 1 star, unwatchable nonsense. The plot was workable, albeit borrowed from a half a dozen other movies. The cinematography was pretty good, the actors tried their best, but the dialogue made no sense whatsoever. The conflict was contrived from the very first time two actors spoke to each other, and it got worse and worse. Yep, that's what I'm saying. Just lazy writing, and I agree. The only mystery is how this got reportedly $14 million allocated to its creation. Netflix is getting more and more competition, and hopefully that will stop it. Well, I agree, this might have something to do with the streaming wars. As the streaming wars heat up and more streaming services come online and more content from different studios is removed from Netflix. Netflix is desperate to make its own content, and yeah, they've kind of used the shotgun approach to buy up other content that was made and not successfully marketed to other people or other studios, and to buy up things that they can on a budget and produce their own shows for cheap. It's the shotgun approach, and a shotgun is one of those things where a lot of the pellets, they don't hit the target, but hopefully enough of them hit the target to do enough damage to consider it still effective. So yeah, it's just I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe the streaming wars, after enough of the streaming services go belly up or get consolidated, or both, maybe the quality will go up. That's what we're hoping. 1.5 stars, not English. 0.5 star. I did not like this show whatsoever. Bad acting, repeated ideas, and just boring. Why would you spend money on shows like this, Netflix? Well, again, I think I just answered that in the last review that I looked at. 1.5 stars. Somehow made it through the first episode. Writing is really poor, which makes bad acting even worse. 0.5 star. Couldn't continue watching after 10 minutes. Yeah, I'll agree. After the first cringe-inducing, meetups between the characters with amnesia, you almost want to stop watching. But I had to continue watching to find out, just how bad it would get. And so, yeah, I made it to that 4th episode, and that's it. 0.5 star. Terrible show. The entire cast makes the worst choices, and it's crazy aggravating. Yeah, a lot of the characters, they're too busy having contrived romances and rapes and bickering with each other. They're just not even concerned about their plight that they're on this deserted island, at least not in the first couple of episodes. 0.5 star. Couldn't get past episode 1. The dialogue was so unnatural it was quite similar in tone to The Room. Yeah, I'll agree. The dialogue right off the bat between the first character shown to the audience is completely cringeworthy, unrealistic, unbelievable. 5 stars. I have no clue why everyone hates this show so much. The dialogue could have been better, but the writing wasn't terrible. Wow, we all disagree. continuing, that kept me wanting more, and I really appreciated the rate of speed they would raise a question and then give you the answer for it. I fell in love with the main character, and they have had a few jaw-dropping moments in there that you may have slightly predicted but still hit you hard. I'm giving this show 5 stars just to try and raise up its score, but in reality I give it 3.5. Well, you know, you fell in love with the main character, and the fact that in every scene, in every frame of this, her body is shown to you and it's so delicious. Okay, fine, but I'm sorry, this is still half a star. 3.5 stars. All right, so the awful ratings are easy to agree with and fairly representative for the 7-episode series. The dialogue, character development, and island amnesia premise is at most meh, not to mention the abundance of plot holes and head-scratching moments. It reminds me of a made-for-TV drawn-out film that airs at 10 a.m. on weekdays or 4 a.m. on weekends. The second half picks up a bit, though quickly falls flat as it's further stained by the unnecessary addition of the Bonnie and Clyde. Yeah, you know, I'm going to call this one. It's not worth, if you just want to turn off the sound and watch some girls on the beach, okay, but again, you're not going to get full nudity, so just warning you on that. It's not worth recommending. 34% on the audience score is too high. I would say 14% is better. More agreeable to me. Yes, it is gorgeous to look at, but it's set, you know, in the same environment that Lost was set in. That's about it. There's some colorful scenes, but it's completely stupid. And if you want to see Bruce McGill make a fool out of himself and forget his lines at points and it's obvious, go ahead and watch it through episode 4 for that. Otherwise, this is a complete disaster, and I will see you again on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.